Ender sat on his bed with his desk on his knees. It was private study time, and Ender was doing free play. It was a shifting, crazy kind of game in which the school computer kept bringing up new things, building a maze that you could explore. You could go back to events that you liked for a while. If you left one alone too long, it disappeared and something else took its place. Sometimes they were funny things, sometimes exciting ones, and he had to be quick to stay alive. He had lots of deaths, but that was okay. Games were like that. You died a lot until you got the hang of it. His figure on the screen had started out as a little boy. For a while, it had changed into a bear. Now it was a large mouse with long and delicate hands. He ran his finger under a lot of large items of furniture depicted on the screen. He had played with the cat a lot, but now it was boring. Too easy to dodge. He knew all the furniture. Not through the mouse hole this time, he told himself. I'm sick of the giant. It's a dumb game and I can't ever win. Whatever I choose is wrong. But he went through the mouse hole anyway, and over the small bridge in the garden. He avoided the ducks and the dive-bombing mosquitoes. He had tried playing with them, but they were too easy, and if he played with the ducks too long, he turned into a fish, which he didn't like. Being a fish reminded him too much of being frozen in the battle room, his whole body rigid, waiting for the practice to end so Dap would thaw him. So, as usual, he found himself going up the rolling hills. The landslides began. At first he had got caught again and again, crushed in an exaggerated blot of gore oozing out from under a rock pile. Now, though, he had mastered the skill of running up the slopes at an angle to avoid the crush, always seeking higher ground. As always, the landslides finally stopped being jumbles of rock. The face of the hill broke open, and instead of shale, it was white bread, puffy, rising like dough as the crust broke away and fell. It was soft and spongy. His figure moved more slowly, and when he jumped down off the bread, he was standing on a table. Giant loaf of bread behind him, giant stick of butter beside him, and Giant himself leaning his chin in his hands looking at him. Ender's figure was about as tall as the giant's head from chin to brow. I think I'll bite your head off, said the giant, as he always did. This time, instead of running away or standing there, Ender walked his figure up to the giant's face and kicked him in the chin. The giant stuck out his tongue, and Ender fell to the ground. How about a guessing game? Asked the giant. So it didn't make any difference. The giant only played the guessing game. Stupid computer. Millions of possible scenarios in its memory, and the giant could only play one stupid game. The giant, as always, set two huge shot glasses as tall as Ender's knees on the table in front of him. As always, the two were filled with different liquids. The computer was good enough that the liquids had never repeated, not that he could remember. This time one had a thick, creamy-looking liquid. The other hissed and foamed. One is poison, one is not, said the giant. Guess right, and I'll take you into fairyland. Guessing meant sticking his head into one of the glasses to drink. He never guessed right. Sometimes his head was dissolved, sometimes he caught on fire, sometimes he fell in and it drowned, and sometimes he fell out, turned green, and rotted away. It was always ghastly, and the giant always laughed. Ender knew that whatever he chose, he would die. The game was rigged. On the first death, he figured he would reappear on the giant's table. On the first death, his figure would reappear on the giant's table to play again. On the second death, he'd come back to the landslides, then to the garden bridge, then to the mouse hole. And then, if he still went back to the giant and played again and died again, his desk would go dark. Free play over would march around the desk, and Ender would lie on his bed and tremble until he could finally go to sleep. The game was rigged, but still the giant talked about fairyland. Some stupid, childish 3-year-old's fairyland that probably had some stupid Mother Goose or Pac-Man or Peter Pan. It wasn't even worth getting to, but he had to find some way of beating the giant to get there. He drank the creamy liquid. Immediately he began to inflate and rise like a balloon. The giant laughed. He was dead again. He played again, and this time the liquid set, like concrete, and held his head down while the giant cut him open along the spine, deboned him like a fish, and began to eat while his arms and legs quivered. He reappeared at the landslides and decided not to go on. He even let the landslides cover him once. But even though he was sweating and he felt cold with his next life, he went back up the hills till they turned into bread and stood on the giant's table as the shot glasses were set before him. He stared at the two liquids, one foaming and the other with waves in it like the sea. He tried to guess which kind of death each one held. Probably a fish will come out of the ocean one and eat me. The foamy one will probably asphyxiate me. I hate this game. It isn't fair. It's stupid. It's rotten. And instead of pushing his face into one of the liquids, he kicked one over, then the other, and dodged the giant's huge hands as the giant shouted, "Cheater! Cheater!" He jumped at the giant's face, clambered up his lip and nose, and began to dig into the giant's eye. The stuff came away like cottage cheese, and as the giant screamed, Ender's figure burrowed into the eye, climbed right in, burrowed in and in. The giant fell over backward. The view shifted as he fell, and when the giant came to rest on the ground, there were intricate lacy trees all around. A bat flew up and landed on the dead giant's nose. Ender brought his figure up out of the giant's eye. "How did you get here?" the bat asked. "Nobody ever comes here." Ender could not answer, of course, so he reached down, took a handful of the giant's eye stuff, and offered it to the bat. The bat took it and flew off, shouting as it went, "Welcome to Fairyland!" He had made it. He ought to explore. He ought to climb down from the giant's face and see what he had finally achieved. Instead, he signed off, put his desk in his locker, stripped off his clothes, and pulled his blanket over him. He hadn't meant to kill the giant. This was supposed to be a game, not a choice between his own grisly death and an even worse murder. I'm a murderer even when I play. Peter would be proud of me.